Denim Couch Podcast. Ooh, whoa, ooh, whoa.
The 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s with Steph with an F.
Hi guys, welcome to the Denim Couch Podcast, where we chill on this denim couch and talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I'm Stephanie Tanner. Welcome. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Tanner with the Denim Couch Podcast. And this week's episode is with Marnae Woodland. And Marnae is also a great storyteller. I was very impressed with the stories that she had and some of the details and activities that I haven't heard before. So get ready for that. It's really exciting. She's a hiker, long distance runner, has a pretty amazing family, and cool stories about old video games and well-known movie series that came out back in the day. And all these memories started back in the 80s for her. So this week I've been reading this book and I highly recommend it. I won't give you the title because I don't want to ruin the ending or outcome for anyone who wants to read it if they pass by it at the bookstore. But this book was about learning to live with grief. And without going into too much detail, I really enjoyed how this book wrapped up. In fact, it's a fictional story, but this lady, her fiance died and they were just months out from getting married, and she ends up trying to figure out how to live with grief. And it's interesting because she just can't handle it. She can't do it. She is struggling so much, and she ends up taking pills to go to sleep at night so that she can actually sleep. And when she takes these pills, she actually ends up living a whole nother life in her dreams with her fiance, who then becomes her husband. And so essentially in this book, she's living two different lives, one while she's asleep and one while she's awake. And what's interesting is that when she's asleep, she's getting to live this life she should have lived if her fiance had not died. And it ends up ruining, in a sense, her actual life because she's depending on her sleep life for her happiness. And she goes through so many cool experiences, both in her sleep and in her daily life, and actually ends up becoming an entirely different person, a better version of herself. And by the end of the book, she's had new people come into her life, a brand new niece come into her life. And because of certain events that she relied on in her sleep, she missed out on events that she should have had in real life and wasn't able to move forward and enjoy her actual life. So what was cool is that the end of this book, she says, I see my library full of people and my friends and family all gathered to support me. I see knackered parents leaning on the bookshelves, getting to know each other with a glass of punch in their hands, and I see kids fizzing with the joy and anticipation of the season. What I see is life. Noisy, messy, complicated life, and I love it. And that just stood out to me so much with this book, because regardless of what grief we're dealing with, or what things have happened in the past to us, or what obstacles we're having a hard time overcoming, it's life, and it's messy, and it's crazy, and it's unexpected, and we really can only move forward and grow when we look at all the wonderful things that we do have. So take a listen. Let's dive in. How common was your name in the 80s?
I knew one other girl that had my name and spelled it the same way that I did, Marnae, but she used it as a middle name. Her name was Susan Marnae. So I knew nobody, and I still don't know anybody with my name. There are lots of Marnies and Myrnas, and that's what I would get called most often, is Marnie. In school, especially in high school, I always knew, like the first day of school when the teacher's going through the roster for the first time, I always knew when they came to my name, because they would say, Miss Peterson, and then they would just call me by my last name. And so I'd have to say, it's Marnae.
What was life like in the 80s?
I didn't have any idea, of course, growing up, of anything about the political climate. So there wasn't, because I was born in 74, and so most of my elementary school years and high school years were in the 80s. But yeah, I had no idea what was going on politically. Just in my own household, though, and with friends, we were just, I don't know, we were just kind of happy-go-lucky. We didn't really worry about too much stuff. We didn't really know any different. It wasn't. That's just the time that we grew up in, and we weren't really concerned with what was going on, outside of our own little world. I was born in Mesa, Arizona,
Okay.
and then we moved, because that's where my parents were both born and raised, in the Mesa-Gilbert area. And then we moved to Southwest Missouri, which is near Joplin. And we lived there for about 14 years. So I was 15 when my family moved back to Mesa. So I was I had just finished up my freshman year in Pierce City, Missouri, and then we moved back to Mesa, and I finished high school there. And it was such a big change, because Pierce City was like a tiny little town. It was only like, I don't know, probably not even 2,000, the city proper, and very rural area all around. And our graduating class, my class was probably only like 70 some students for the whole school. And then I moved to Mesa, and my high school, there was over 700 in my graduating class. I was fortunate because I had lots of family there. I actually had 2 cousins that attended the same high school that I did and were in the same grade. I at least knew, that if all else fails, I could go sit with them at lunch. Yeah, it was a big move for us, and it was different in lots of ways, because my childhood years, of course, in Pierce City, we lived on 20 acres, and it was wooded, and everything was lush and green, very humid, of course, very rural area, and we just spent all of our time outside and finding misadventures to get into. But then we moved to Mesa, and it's just this huge city. But it was perfect. I think it was perfect timing for me, because I was 15 and I was looking for, a little bit more, I guess, sophisticated activities, enjoying the city life and shopping at the mall. That was a big thing in the 80s, shopping at malls. We just would browse, just to go.
What did you do for fun in the 80s?
Definitely shopping malls, and I could remember being pretty young and going out with, I think maybe I was 8 the first time that I got to go to a shopping mall. That was my friend's birthday, and we went to a movie. It was Annie, and then it was just amazing to me. You just shop after shop after shop after shop, and not that we bought anything. We might have gone into Claire's or something and bought a little headband or an earring or something like that, but we didn't really have any money. So yeah, definitely the shopping mall, just to go, just to meet other people and browse and visit. And movies, when I was really little, the Star Wars movies first came out. I don't know when the first Star Wars movies came out, but I clearly remember as a family going to the drive-in for a double feature, and I think it was The Empire Strikes Back and probably a Smokey and the Bandit movie. And then we went back again when Return of the Jedi came out, and I don't know. So the drive-in always played a double feature. We would go for Star Wars. Our family, we didn't go out for movies a lot, but we would go to the drive-in to watch a Star Wars movie. So we did a lot of sleepovers. That was still very the thing to do. We did a lot of sleepovers with girlfriends. Some of my friends lived in town when we lived in Pierce City. I had a few friends that lived in town, and so I loved when I got to spend the night with them, because they could walk to the ice cream shop, or we could walk to the grocery store and get a little, cup of yogurt. We could even walk to the school and play on the playground equipment. So I loved that I had friends that lived in town, and when I spent time with them, we just walked all over the place. Now when I was at home, and because we were out of town, we rode our bikes everywhere. We would just get on the bike and ride, but we never rode into town. I don't know how far we were out of town, but we would just ride all over the country roads on our bicycles. So it's kind of funny because I'm not sure that I feel okay with my little kids getting on a bike and just riding for miles and miles and miles, or even if we lived in town, letting them just roam around town. But anyway, different time. Video games started becoming more popular in the 80s. And I remember if you had an Atari, that was like the first home-based system was the Atari. And so that you didn't have to go to the arcades. That was another thing we would do. If you wanted to play a video game, you went to the arcade. You didn't have, most people didn't have video games at their house. But the Atari comes along, and then all of a sudden you have this, personal video system that you could hook up to your TV, and it played like Space Invaders and I don't know, Frogger or something like that. But anyway, so one of my friends did have an Atari, and of course anytime that I was over there, it was the thing to play, even though the games were compared to today, they're just so silly.
What were some popular activities?
My senior year, my friends and I had decided that for a senior trip, we were going to have a Havasupai in the Grand Canyon. Well, I never got to do it because it flooded that year, and so they weren't allowing hikers in. So we had to just change our plans. But I think the name of the hike we did was Horton Springs. Anyway, we backpacked in, and it was two of my girlfriends and then a couple of our other guy friends. And then we had an adult chaperone, my friend's dad came along with us. But I had done some backpacking as a young woman, I can't remember what they call it, but it was kind of like a high adventure, but not for boys, it was for girls. Anyway, so I had started doing once we moved back to Arizona, I started getting into hiking and backpacking. And that's kind of where I developed my love for hiking and backpacking, was during my teen years, because there really wasn't anything to do in Missouri. All the public land was like state parks, and it was usually like a lake or a river. And so we didn't really do a whole lot of camping and hiking when we lived in Missouri. So moving out to Arizona was also good for me to develop my interest in backpacking and hiking, and I still try to do that today.
Do you have any favorite memories from the 80s?
I grew up with 8 brothers and sisters. I have 5 brothers that are living and that I grew up with, and then I have 3 sisters. We basically made our own fun, and so a lot of my childhood memories just really revolve around my brothers and sisters and the things that we did together. And some of my favorite memories are just spending time with them. We did a lot of pretending and imagining and going on adventures out on our property and stuff, rather than, watching TV and playing video games when we were small. Yeah, so I was just actually talking to some of my cousins about some memories that I had with my brothers and sisters. And we had this old, kind of an old house, so it was the original house of the property that was behind our house, and we used to go in there and just play all day and make up all kinds of stuff. So family reunions with both sides of the family, the Peterson side and the Tryon side. There was one family reunion. It was with my mother's family, the Tryon family, and it was called the Tryon Truckin' Trailer Train. And basically most of the family was in Arizona, so what they did is they all rented motorhomes and fifth wheels. They traveled around the country and made a stop at each of the other family members' homes that were not in Arizona. So they all traveled and they stopped in Missouri to see us, and then they all went out to Virginia to see another aunt, and then I don't know, somebody was somewhere else. And they all wore these T-shirts. Someone had made up T-shirts that said, try and truck and trailer train. Everything about our house I thought was just old news and boring and everything. But then all my cousins from Arizona come to see us in Missouri, and they just thought it was amazing because we had trees and we had grass and we had this huge yard space, and just you could go outside because it wasn't so stinking hot. You could play outside all day and just get lost in the woods. And so they thought it was great. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize our house was so fun and our place was so fun. I ran track as a teenager. I did it in middle school and high school, and I figured out when I was pretty young that I was pretty fast. Didn't have these long legs, and I wasn't like a sprinter or a hurdler. I was still pretty fast, and I had some endurance. So I ended up being a distance runner. So I ran the mile and the 2 mile, and my senior year, I was getting sick of the 2 mile. I hated. Well, I knew that it wasn't my best race, and I tried to tell my coach that. And I said, I would much rather run the 800, which is just 2 laps around. And he's like, no, you can't do that. That's for the sprinters. You can't do that. And I said, no, you've got to give me a chance. The next time we had like an intramural or like an inter squad meet, just to kind of see, the coaches wanted to make sure that they were placing their runners where they needed to be. I ran it against some of my other teammates, and I got first. My coach was like, oh, okay. So then I didn't have to run the 2 mile anymore. I just ran the mile and the 800. By this time we were living in Arizona, and my mom almost always came to my home meets, and she would bring her parents, my grandparents.
What was the fashion like back in the 80s?
I look back at pictures of us, and I think, especially when I'm, looking at what we're wearing, and I think, what was my mom thinking? We just look like, ragamuffins or whatever, cut off shorts and, T-shirts and stuff. But then everybody, it's funny because everybody wore the same thing. But when I did start getting a little bit older in my teenage years, of course, what was really popular were really bold colors, and you would mix and match those colors. So lots of teal and purple and black and hot pink and all those neon colors. And so we would mix and match those. We would tease our hair, just tease the life out of our hair. Just the bigger, the better. Bangs would go like sky high, and we would just try, we'd spend probably 20 minutes in the morning just trying to get our hair as big as it could be. I can remember also wearing our socks over our pants. We'd tight roll our pants, and then we would put our socks on so that they would cover the edge of our tight roll. Sometimes we would layer the socks, like a teal colored sock and then a white colored sock, and then we'd wear kids' tennis shoes.
What made you happy back then?
Probably the same thing that brings every other teenager happiness, just spending time with my friends. I was pretty serious about about my schoolwork. And so it made me happy to get good grades. Mm-hmm. So that was something that I was pretty concerned with. And so, yeah, hanging out with my friends. We did our junior high and high school did dances, every so often. And so that was a chance for us to get together and hang out. And I loved listening to music. I loved all the music of the 80s, but I wasn't one of these kids that really got into a band and bought all their albums and went to the concerts and bought their T-shirts and read about them in magazines. And I wasn't like that. I liked listening to the radio and just listening to music and stuff like that with friends. So that was another thing.
How would you compare your childhood or teenage years to today's kids?
There's a lot more distractions for these kids. And I think the social media can be a little bit unhealthy for the teenagers. And I just don't remember, and maybe I was just blind to it, I just don't remember teens having so many emotional problems. I feel, and maybe I'm just, as a parent, more aware of it now with my own kids and with my friends' kids, and just, just in general around the community and around the world. It just seems like kids, just their mental health seems to be a really big issue. And I just don't remember it being such a big issue when I was a teenager. But like I said, I could have just been completely oblivious to everybody else. I think also that, at least with my kids, they have more opportunity than I did, like with sports activities and extracurricular activities. I always wanted to maybe take dance lessons, or I did get to take piano lessons, but not until I was older. So I wanted to do, piano lessons and just on and on and on, and soccer or anything like that. But so I didn't participate in a lot of extracurricular activities, and I feel like my kids have the opportunity to do that more than what I did. There's a lot of pressure with like school and grades and going on to college. Then I think there's more pressure than I had about, going to college and being prepared for that than what I experienced.
What brings you peace or calmness during hard times?
I have my faith, and that's something that I rely on, and I have an eternal perspective of things. So I understand that what I'm feeling now, or what I'm going through now, isn't going to last forever, for one thing. And then also with that eternal perspective, I understand that these hard things, these challenges are important for my growth and my development, not just, not just emotional growth, but spiritual growth. And that's how these challenges have a way of connecting me back to my Savior. So yeah, keeping it in just kind of a perspective, not just looking at what's hard right now and only focusing on that, but trying to look long term. How can this thing help me? What do I need to understand? Also, I think just learning to appreciate all the blessings in your life. Instead of focusing on the negative and everything that's wrong, I try to remember what's good. What's good in my life? Okay, I still have my health. I still have my, my children, and on and on and on. So, count your blessings. Talking with my family, talking with my parents, talking with my siblings, especially my sisters. My sisters were all really close. Being able to share your burdens with somebody, to speak them out loud is important. I mean, there's some things that you want to keep private, and it makes it feel like that you're bearing it alone. Being able to share it with somebody, your husband or your sister or somebody, your friend, a good friend, somebody that you love and trust, that helps bring some peace to me too.
I loved Marnae's stories. I am so glad she was able to share those with me. I want to thank her for doing that, and we're just rolling right through the 80s. I don't know if it's because I love the 80s so much, or because this is the last decade of this podcast that I'll be doing, but it is flying by so fast, and I hope you guys are enjoying the 80s. I just think it was such a fun time. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful week. I will talk to you very soon. Bye. Wait. You can't miss the embarrassing story of the week. No. Okay. It's that time. It's Steph with an F's embarrassing story of the week. Okay, so this week's embarrassing story is going to be about my husband. So my mother-in-law got these wonderful blankets made of just a compilation of our pictures. So I have one and Glenn has one, and mine is pink with probably 10 or so photos of myself from being a kid to a teenager on this blanket. And his has the same thing, but of him. And I love that the other day when he is in his underwear and wants to go downstairs to get something to drink because we have other people living with us, he cannot just go out in his underwear. So he decides to put my pink blanket with all my faces around him like a toga. and that was a sight to see, let me tell you. I wish I had a photo for you, but I could not do that. That would embarrass him quite a bit more than this will. So I never thought I would see the one guy I find so attractive wear a toga of my face to cover up one day. Alrighty, I hope you guys all have a wonderful week. Talk to you next week. Bye.
If you came here for mental health help, please go visit your doctor. If you're looking for some mental health tips, Dr. Daniel Amen is someone I follow. I love what he has to say and offer. I think his website is brainhealthassessment.com, and he just has some awesome checklist items that go over brain health habits that you should be doing to have better brain health. I want to say there's like 5 to 10 items, and if you have those, if you're working on those habits and trying to improve them to improve your brain health, you'll also improve your happiness level, because brain health equals mental health. So keep your brains happy and healthy, and check out Dr. Daniel Amen. This is not sponsored. I just really like what he has to say, and I think it's really beneficial. I think it can help a lot of people. It's actually very matter of fact, kind of obvious, but yet we neglect so many of these habits daily. And I do feel like, if you're feeling unhappy, that may be one of the reasons you're unhappy, because you're neglecting your brain health, which is also your mental health. And trying to improve these habits could really help. So check him out. If you have any stories from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, please get in contact with me. Let's chat. I want nothing more than to chat about the past. I want nothing more than to chat about the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. If you have any specific questions that I'm not asking that you would like to know about these eras while interviewing these people, please let me know. I would love some advice, and I would love your input. So, what would you guys like to know?